Welcome to Fall, Rise, Give, a space where we invite you to dig into the real cause of your suffering, looking at opportunities for growth with a change in your beliefs, thoughts, and actions so you can be your true self and be inspired. Join us as we explore life's ups and downs and navigate the twists and turns, sharing stories of resilience, hope, and the transformative power of giving back. Whether you're looking for a change, in recovery, or simply seeking inspiration, this podcast is your go-to for candid conversations, raw emotions, and a whole lot of heart. Tune in and discover how to fall, rise, and give back on life's extraordinary journey. Wow, we made it to 30 episodes. Fall, Rise, Give. How you doing? I'm bartender Bob. That's Kumar. We have Kellie as a special guest this week. Turn struggles into opportunities by being your true self and help others. Kumar, I just wanted to say we made it 30 weeks. Who would have thought 30 weeks ago we'd be doing this thing still?
Yeah, and probably going to do it more than 30 more weeks for sure. I don't see it stopping at all. It's just going to continue to grow and grow. So I'm pretty excited about it.
And I'm excited about our guest this week, Kellie Adams. She wrote a book called Shit I Do Sober. Wow. How'd you come up with the title?
In early sobriety, I started realizing, well, it started with oatmeal, actually. I was...
As every good story does, it starts with oatmeal.
Right? So I was newly sober and I was making instant oatmeal, and I realized for the first time in my life that there's actually lines on the package to measure your water. And in my head, I was like, should I do sober? Like, I'm aware enough to realize it's a handy dandy measuring thing, right? Well, anyway, it just took off from there. I started an Instagram page. At the time, it was called Pure Life Recovery. But within that page, I started doing posts about should I do sober, cleaning baseboards, making oatmeal. It just started with really mundane things. But then, as I got more and more years of sobriety, it turned into really like life on life terms, things, grieving, getting married, having cancer scares, that type of thing.
So what made you get sober?
Divine intervention. I mean, I drank for 34 years. So I had started to decline after my divorce. The last 5 years of drinking were really intense. And I started doing benzos and smoking pot, and I was a mom to 2 teenage girls. And I just hit bottom one day. It just all fell apart. And I just decided I needed to be done. It was a pretty dramatic bottom. I'm not unique. Everyone hits some kind of bottom. But it was enough for me to stay sober. And, through years and years of, I'm going to quit this week, or I'm only going to drink non-alcoholic beer and smoke pot, I tried a combination of everything, but I ended up suicidal. So that's what got me to stop. I got scared enough, and my liver was at the brink of disaster. So it was time. I was 47 when I got sober. I'd been drinking since I was 13.
The funny thing is, as you mentioned oatmeal and the lines on the oatmeal packet, I used to bring oatmeal into work, and I used that trick while I was working. So I could have actually called it shit I do at work. And, but what was the craziest thing that you found out that you could do as a sober person that you had no idea while you were drunk?
Well, number one would be parenting, like fully present. My kids were 15 and 12 when I hit bottom, and it opened up a whole new relationship with my children, which is beautiful now. But the other big thing, when I met my current husband, he suggested we go rock climbing. And I was like, oh, hell no, I'm afraid of heights. I don't want to fall. I don't want to actually die now that I'm sober. But I did it. And it's amazing. And it's odd because I'm still afraid of heights, but the act of climbing doesn't scare me. I'm not that good at it, but I do it and I really enjoy it. And for me, it's the time, any time outside is time out of my head. But, he'll always encourage me. He's been climbing most of his life, and I'll get to the top and he'll say, now turn around and look at the view. And I'm like, no, I'm good. But I do really enjoy it. And getting outside is something I never did when I was drinking.
Now, living in Idaho, so are you climbing like potato hills or?
No, but there are some beautiful, we are in a really, really great jumping off place being in Idaho Falls. Montana's 3 hours away. We go over there a lot and climb. There's an area out here that Clay is my husband's name, he really enjoys. I don't necessarily enjoy it. It's super hot in the summertime. I guess I'm a fair weather outdoors person. I don't like being super hot. So, but yeah, there's a lot of opportunity out here where we live.
That's awesome. One of the questions that we ask everybody is to tell us about yourself.
Oh, well, I'm creative, and I always have been, but that was very limited based on how often I was drunk. So I could start projects and not finish them. But now I have the opportunity. I bake like crazy. It started out with being an escape when I first got sober. When you get sober, I'm very involved in AA, and one of the things they say is you need a sufficient substitute for alcohol. Baking became that for me. In early sobriety, I'd be up in the middle of the night. Instead of drinking, I'd be making hundreds of cookies.
Wow.
And it was crazy because it also fulfilled the sugar cravings I had in early sobriety. But that's gone to a whole new level. And I'm in a profession, I'm a marketer. I help small businesses with their websites and social media. That's also a very creative outlet for me. And then, of course, writing. And I've been writing my whole life. I think I still have these poems somewhere I wrote when I was probably 8 years old in the back of my dad's van. On our way to northern Michigan, I wrote poems about boogers and poems about underwear. And my sister will tease me to this day, like, oh, we always knew you'd be a writer, based on those poems. But I was, in high school, I was in the journalism class. So I always had this desire to write. But all of it was impossible when I was drinking. I just didn't have the bandwidth. And I went through a phase where I thought, oh, drinking makes me more creative. Well, for about a half hour, until I spilled my drink or needed more or whatever. So creativity is a big thing. I'm really involved in the recovery community. I have some other women I sponsor, and I just never expected it. I used to drive by the hall in Bozeman, Montana, where AA held their meetings, and they would have barbecues and stuff outside, and I'd drive by drunk and be like, oh my gosh, those poor people. They have to celebrate 4th of July sober. But now I'm one of those poor people. And I'll tell you what, we have a ton of fun. So I'm very, very immersed in the recovery community. And I guess, it's just opened up a world of love and being present that I didn't even know existed. I have regrets sometimes, but I can't live in that it took me so long to get sober. I mean, I drank for 34 years of my life. So I'm sitting here at 57 thinking, oh my God, there's days I get panicked. Like, I probably don't have another, how many more years do I have? My grandma died when she was 101. But I now have that desire to be the best I can be. And this book that I wrote, I started in 2017 when I was 3 years sober. And my family went through a traumatic event last year. And for some reason, that kicked my ass into like, you need to get this book done. And it wasn't a need, it was a want. I was like, I want to get this book done. And it's been an amazing and beautiful process and kind of scary at the same time of putting it all out there.
Let's talk about the book. So you said a traumatic event happened last year. In order to kind of push you toward the book, you started in 2017. It's 2024 now. Why did it take that long to get to this point?
Just distractions. My dad died of dementia in 2016. So again, another traumatic event. It started me on like, okay, it's time to start my book. I think it's these moments where I come to like fear. It's fear-based or a dire need to accomplish something. So seeing what my dad went through, it started the book process. Mm-hmm. Last year, my youngest daughter was assaulted, and it was a full year of trauma and fear and threats. And I don't know. I just woke up one day and I thought, you know what? Life is so short. Why are you still sitting on these chapters? Why haven't you finished this? This person who assaulted her had also threatened me. And I just realized, I don't have tomorrow. So why don't you pull out all those old notes and those old blogs and all those old social media posts that you took down to make content for your book and get started? So it just seems like it's, for me in sobriety, it's when I'm at that precipice of normalcy and when things are going great to the other shoe dropping, which pushes me into this motivation phase. It's a weird thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is kind of strange that dramatic events motivate you instead of cocooning or wanting to be, complacent and just going through that stuff. I don't have that same feeling for myself. I tend to, when dramatic events happen, I just go back to normalcy, try to live try to get through the event. So tell us about the book. What's the main thesis and what is it that you're trying to share in the book? What do you want people to take away from the book?
I really have a goal to save lives, even if it's one life. And so the book starts, the first 4 chapters are my history, and they start with each state I lived in up to the time I hit bottom. And then it's a series of short stories of the shit I do sober. And I had mentioned earlier, grieving and trauma are big ones. But then there's just some funny short stories, wearing different shoes. I've gone from what I call cha-cha heels to hiking shoes. And it's just being relatable. And I don't want to say it's only for women, but as a mom and a woman, I felt so much shame around my drinking. Drinking in the laundry room, drinking in the garage, and not ever wanting to admit I'm that mom at the soccer games with a container full of wine, with a small bottle of wine in my purse in case I run out. So my whole point of the book was to shred that shame that women and moms go through. It's heartbreaking what my kids went through. They're the ones that saved my life the day I hit bottom. So it's not only about the moms, but families in general. Drinking destroys families. So my whole point is just to put my whole story out there, well, most of it, and hope I relate to somebody and save them from the same kind of pain and misery I put myself through and my family through. It doesn't need to be that way. And a lot of marketing, alcohol marketing, targets women. One of my favorite bottles of wine, I would be going to my best drinking buddy's house, stop at the gas station, and there was this wine called Mad Housewife, and it had the coolest label. It was like this vintage housewife. Didn't even taste good, but the label got me. Like, oh, how fun is this? I am a mad housewife. And it's just, there's other books written about the marketing toward women in particular to drink, and moms, mommy happy hour, mommy sippy cups. So it's all of that stuff I just want to bring to light. I know other people know about it. I'm not doing anything new. But my hope is by sharing the story that I can save some other people from the same misery.
So your book is going to be self-published, middle of November.
Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite story that you told in the book?
As hard as it was to tell the story about my dad's dementia, because there was such a lapse there in while I was gone, is what the chapter is called. While I was gone drinking, he was also disappearing. He was gone. And just the effect that had on me and the process of grieving sober. I never had to grieve sober before. Mm-hmm. And there was some desperation there that was pretty interesting for me to navigate. So that's one of my favorites. And then the other would be that evolution of not wanting to climb. And like I said, I'm not an avid climber, but I've done it. And there's a really fun story in there about when we were dating, how my husband had to coax me onto this very large rock that I crawled. It wasn't even vertical. Like, I was so scared of it. But just the growth. There's a lot of growth in the stories, and in those two in particular.
Do you have any funny stories that you share?
Mm-hmm. I don't want to give it all away, but yes, there's some fun stories related to bodily functions that get normal when you are sober.
Is it boogers?
Pardon?
Tell me it's boogers. Is it boogers?
It's not boogers. I need to find that poem, though. I'm sure I still have it somewhere. I'm a little bit of a hoarder. So bodily functions, and then just like intimacy, the first intimate experience I had in sobriety, because I hadn't been sober in 34 years. So use your imagination. That was a very scary moment, but it's also very real. And it's stuff that you hear about it a little bit at meetings because that's kind of where we spill everything. But I want to relate to the general public who thinks, oh my God, if I quit drinking, how am I ever going to have sex? How am I ever going to go on a trip without drinking? We went to Hawaii last year or 2 years ago. And when I first got sober, I was like, how am I ever going to travel and not drink? So it's those little moments that for me as a drunk woman, how am I ever going to do these things if I get sober? Well, you know what? It's possible. And now I've done them all. I had a list of reasons I would drink when I got sober. Number one was if a parent died. Like, why wouldn't I drink, right? Well, my dad died and I didn't drink. Doesn't mean I didn't get desperate, but I didn't drink. I got married. We had a wedding ceremony. We toasted with sparkling blood orange champagne. Went to Hawaii and didn't have an umbrella drink. So it's just, I want people to understand there's life, and life can be so beautiful, and we're not dull because we're sober. That's my motivation.
That's quite amazing. People have this huge misconceived perception of what life is like sober. I get this question asked all the time, and I'm the same way. I actually thought that I would be boring, but I'm having such a incredible time. I went to Mexico. That was the original goal that I didn't want to drink on, to go to Mexico. I just spent a whole week in Sayulita, Mexico, where I had drank in a ton before previous trips, and I was totally sober and totally aware, and I had a blast. I really relished the beach walks and all the things that the sunshine and the beach environment gives you. The food, I was totally aware for that. Then I went to New Orleans on New Year's Eve, where everybody was drinking, people walking around in the streets. I had a blast with my wife on that. And then we went to Europe last year. And of course, you want to drink a glass of wine in Paris or Amsterdam or whatever.
Yeah.
So the level of awareness and the level of beauty and the level of emotional enjoyment that you get from simple things, like you said, the title of your book, Should I Do Sober? So you're right. It's so many amazing things that come out of it that the average person who's drinking a lot has no clue about. They think they need that drink to have fun. In a way, it actually blocks them from having fun because they're not aware anymore.
Definitely. And there's no retention of those moments, or very little for me. I was a blackout drinker almost out of the gate. So all those moments of my life that could have been really rich, I remember them, but the depth of those moments was just always kind of diluted. Pun. There's a pun there. But, I just attended a big AA convention 2 weeks ago, and I was in a room before our sober costume party, and they counted down all the years of sobriety in the room, and it was 2,000 plus years of sobriety.
Wow.
You want to talk about people having fun? We went to the arcade, we danced, all this stuff. It's like, life is so much better now. But I wouldn't have listened to anybody that told me that. And you can't until you hit your own bottom, whatever that is, however you come skidding to your bottom, no one can tell you. It's kind of like childbirth. No one can tell you how that is until you do it. Sobriety is the same, and it's a different path for everybody, but it sure is a lot better than the alternative.
Kumar, I probably have no idea what you're talking about with that whole childbirth thing. I was there at the beginning, and I was there 9 months later, and I've been there since then. But that in between time, just not really there, Kellie.
Lucky, yeah.
Do your children drink or your husband drink?
No, my husband and I met in AA actually.
Okay.
So he has. I have 10 years sober. He has 12 years sober. My oldest daughter does drink. My youngest does not. She's autistic and does not need any substances in her system. But my oldest, as of yet, is still responsible. So I'm fingers crossed that she maintains that.
Yeah, that is excellent. And Kumar and I have had conversations in the past about how my profession is I'm a bartender. So I see people from sober to trashed in my,
Yeah.
and I do have a couple cocktails, but I don't, And I'm sure everybody says they don't have a problem, but I can have like 2 or 3 beers and be done and, walk away from it or whatever. But I was just wondering, is it hard for you to be around people that do drink?
No, in the beginning, I know when my brother came to visit me one time, I think I had 6 months sober, and he likes his beer. And I was like, can you not drink in the house? But now it doesn't bother me. And what I've learned through so many years of sobriety is the drinking is just a symptom of all the underlying bullshit that I haven't dealt with. Mm-hmm. So for me, being around a drink doesn't trigger me or anything. I get emotionally triggered by certain behaviors or environmental situations, but no, it does not bother me being around drinks.
So what's been your biggest gain from since you've overcome your drinking and putting all this stuff onto paper into book form?
Man, that was such a healing process. I cried more last year than I have in the last 10, just reliving my life. So it was very healing for me. And as I had mentioned before, that trauma was a jumping off point. And I have a pretty steady load of clients right now. I think I have 12. So I'm super busy and super productive, which is also a gift of sobriety. I'm putting out quality work now instead of napping, passing out every 2 hours. But someone had asked me, when are you finding time to write your book? And because of that trauma, I wasn't sleeping. So I would just write when I couldn't sleep. So it's all been so therapeutic for me just to, I don't want to say relive, but revisit the places I've been. And the gift of sobriety is showing me where I am now. I'm not that mom who takes a Xanax and white wine in the morning, drives the kids to school, sleeps most of the day, picks them up, gets drunk at night, drinks in the middle of the night so I don't have the shakes in the morning. I am no longer a slave to this disease. And my output, my creative output, my love is so much more authentic and genuine than it once was. Everything before was surface level. There's just more depth to my life now, and that's good and bad. I feel everything far deeper than I used to.
We call AA, and we always say go to aa.org, and we call it the Attitude Adjustment Program.
Yeah.
And we don't want people to be biased in their thinking of AA is just a bunch of drunks who are living XYZ. I have gotten a ton out of the program, and these are normal people that I associate with, not the people that you think in the, standing outside of a church, smoking cigarettes kind of a thing. And the common thing is, hey, there's a bunch of losers who can't handle their alcohol. But that's not true. There's people in all sorts of life. There's nurses, doctors, executives, all sorts of people in the groups that I associate with. What is the number one tool out of AA that you got, or top 2 or 3 that you want to share that you think people will benefit from? Obviously, AA is a great tool, great system program to help people get sober and see the benefits of, not only alcoholic sobriety, but also emotional sobriety, spiritual sobriety, things like that. What are some of the top things that you think people get out of AA?
Connection is probably the biggest one for me. Just realizing, there's a saying that we mix with those we wouldn't normally mix with when you're in a room of AA, because it levels out the playing field. It doesn't matter if you're a doctor or the person under the bridge or the stay-at-home mom. We all have the same freaking problem. I'm not going to swear, even though my book has a swear word in it. But connection for me was the biggest thing. I came in the rooms in June of 2014, and immediately it was suggested I get involved in service. So I'd say connection and service are huge for me. That first year I did all of the events at our fellowship. We went from Halloween to Christmas to New Year's to Valentine's Day. That shit kept me sober. I had no idea what was going on. Like, someone just kept saying, go to the store and get this, go to the store and get that. Well, every time I went to the store annoyed, I was staying sober. Like, all service work keeps you out of your head and keeps you sober. And now I've moved into not so much the events, but sponsorship. And so for me, I have a daily ritual in the morning. I do some readings and some journaling. I will check in with my sponsee. But that connection is huge. I don't know what I would have done. 1 week into AA and I had to move. I had gotten evicted. And they came to my rescue. People pulled up with U-Hauls and trucks and whatever and helped me move. People I didn't know. And I know there's someone out there, a professional guy, that says the opposite of addiction is connection. His name escapes me right now. But for me, that's what AA does. And there's times I need to supplement it. I've needed counseling through the years. I needed grief counseling when my dad died. But my foundation is AA, and I cannot stress that enough. And it is not dull. It is not a cult. Um, I have learned so much about myself that's just beautiful.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I just want to mention this other thing that I love. One of my guys' friends from Tennessee joins our Zoom call, and he calls God a group of drunks in
Mhm.
AA. That's one of the sayings that I absolutely love. We haven't talked about God much, but maybe, last few minutes we've got left a little bit. Can you share a little bit about your connection with your higher power, God, energy, whatever you call your thing above yourself?
Yeah. Actually, that's the longest chapter in my book, is my chapter about God. I was raised Lutheran and went to church most of the time until my parents got divorced. So I really only went to church till I was 8. But then I went through some postpartum depression when my first daughter was born, and I felt this emptiness, and I couldn't figure it out. But in my mind, I just kept thinking there must be something else. So I started reading a lot of Eastern religion, and it just clicked with me. And while I wasn't sober then and wouldn't be sober for another 20 years probably, that little bit of foundation with a higher power and that connection I had in 2001 served me well when I got sober in 2014. So I just did bad math there. It wasn't 20 years. I don't do math. But for me now, I do not have a Christian God. I'm not opposed to Christianity. My youngest daughter is Christian, and I go to church with her, and I take a notepad, and I'm always hearing something that I can relate to. So for me, my higher power doesn't have a face, doesn't have a name. I call him God. I feel that connection most when I am outside, or just now that I'm sober, I have the ability to listen and see things that I know are a gift of my higher power.
On the Eastern religion, would you mind mentioning that Eastern religion that you thought or do you mind sharing that? Just
Yeah,
curious.
well, the Buddhism, I'm looking at my bookshelf right now. Buddhism, I had read The Art of Happiness by the Dalai Lama was the first book I read when I was going through that postpartum. And that is like, it just struck me like, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. It was that connection. And then I read this. I'll just have to show you because it's this one. And I always say his name wrong. Thich Nhat Hanh, whatever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But look at all these Post-it notes, right? That
Wow.
was during my postpartum. Um, and I found that recently and I thought, oh my gosh, I should go back and look at all those Post-it notes and see what made sense to me. But for me, I start my day with a prayer. It's usually the third step prayer if you know AA. And sometimes I apply that to people who are hurting. Like sometimes I'll do the third step prayer and put my daughter's name in and my husband's name. So I always start the day with prayer, reading, and journaling, and my higher power guides me on what I need.
Kellie Adams is our guest this week in the Flourish Give podcast. The book is called Should I Do Sober? It's coming out in the middle of November, self-published, by the way. What do you hope to accomplish with your book, Kellie?
I really want to save some lives, and I really want to stress that there shouldn't be any shame around alcoholism. It comes to a point where it's no longer a choice. You know, when I picked up a drink at 13 years old, it was a choice, but it very quickly became something I couldn't control.
The second question is, where can we get your book once it's out?
Immediately on Amazon, and then I will start pushing it out to some other external websites. And I'll have those all posted on my social media channel and my website.
And what is that?
ShouldIDoSober.com.
And should is spelt out SHIT?
It is, yeah. On Facebook, the I is left out because Zuckerberg wouldn't let me put the whole word in. So
You could just do a pause like, shh, it.
that's a good one. I tried different combinations, and I finally was just like, I'm just going to leave the I out. People can use their imagination.
We really appreciate the message that you have. Obviously, you and I have a very similar thing. I'm part of AA and not ashamed of it. It's the best thing that I've done for myself. And we just want to, from my perspective and kind of where I want to go, I wasn't a blackout drunk. It doesn't mean that I didn't have a problem, I didn't have the disease. I want people to live a thriving life of their dreams. And oftentimes people are living a numb life when they're drinking. And so when you get in recovery, people start to read all these books on self-help and Eastern religion, like you said, these amazing books, they're really thriving. And so that's the message that I want to share out with people who are helping us motivate each other and kind of inspiring us. And your story is very inspiring. So I'm really glad that you came on the show, and really appreciate you as a person. And I think you definitely will make a huge difference in people's lives. Let's definitely stay in touch, Kellie.
Yeah, I appreciate both of you for inviting me on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Fall, Rise, Give, where we explore stories of resilience, growth, and giving back. If you enjoyed today's episode, please visit our website at www.fallrisegive.com. Also, consider subscribing to our podcast on your favorite platform and leaving us a review. Your feedback helps us to continue to bring you inspiring stories. Stay tuned for our next episode, and remember, every fall is a chance to rise, and every rise is an opportunity to give. Until next time, keep falling, rising, and giving. This is Fall, Rise, Give, produced by podcastforhire.com. Thank you for listening.